Hey, hey, I'm Sarah, the Real Simple Mama. Dun, dun, dun. And we are going to do the chicken netting. I know you guys have been like, when are you gonna do it? I'm waiting on you, hurry up. And we've been doing, the landscaping, and we needed to install the coop door, and we needed to get the solar fan going. Our number one concern was, getting our chickens ready for the summer and have little butterflies in our hanging baskets. But what we're gonna do now is we are gonna start doing the bird netting. So super quickly, I'm going to tell you what it is and why we're doing it, and then we're going to have just a progress build video. So the bird netting is essentially a product that you can buy that is a nylon netting that is woven so that the openings are about 2 inches square. And bird netting is used for multiple things. You can put it over, if you have a huge garden bed, or if you have trellises and you don't want birds or squirrels or things coming in and eating your strawberries, for example. It allows your plants to still get sunlight, and it allows your plants to still get watered, but bigger things that would be a danger, obviously they can't come in and get it. So what we're using the bird netting for here, and what a lot of people use it for, is if you have an open chicken run that has no ceiling, right, where your chickens are just out in the open, then the bird netting will protect them from any kind of aerial predator. So here in South Texas, some of the aerial predators that we have would include red-tailed hawks, red-shoulder hawks. There are different kinds of owls. Most aerial predators, they will, they'll swoop down and they'll try to carry their prey somewhere else, somewhere safe to eat it. But particularly if you've got chicks, if you let your hens basically hatch their own chicks, if you've got a rooster and they're able to make babies, that's going to be the concern, because then you've got a whole bunch more predators that can now pick up baby chicks. Some of the hawks we have here in South Texas, for example, they probably honestly can't pick up a full-grown chicken, but they could definitely, get away with your chicks. So you want to be careful of that. Right, Blue? The other reason you might want to put bird netting in your chicken run, so the first big reason is to keep predators out. The other big reason is to keep your chickens in. Now, I do have a predator video all about predators. I have multiple predator videos that talk all about, the different predators and their strategies and all that stuff. And I also have a video about how to clip your chicken's wings. And it's not hurtful to the bird at all. You're not cutting through bone or anything like that. Chickens, because they do molt, you do have to cut their wings once a year, but they don't continue to grow all the time like, you having to cut your fingernails or anything like that. So the other thing is, especially if you're going to have taller structures like this, or like this umbrella, we're building that lean-to that's going to be a shaded structure. When I had that chicken storage bin in my chicken run, your chickens can basically hop up onto things and then hop right out of their chicken yard. So the bird netting is still going to allow breeze, of course, and rain to come down and through, and snow and leaves and all of that stuff. But it's hopefully going to keep everybody in who's supposed to be in, and keep everybody out who's supposed to be out. And we just ordered nylon chicken netting on Amazon. So real quick, I'm going to give you a few suggestions on what you need to do to prep for the bird netting. But I'll be honest with you, I cannot really think of any reason why you wouldn't want to do it. For us, like I said, it hasn't been the biggest priority because we don't have a ton of predatory birds here in the neighborhood. But I have seen a couple of hawks swoop in and try to grab something. So it's definitely, yes, something that we wanted to do. So what we have done is the green and white poles you see all around as we've been upgrading our chicken run, those are called utility posts. And they're just a basic metal post that you hammer into the ground with a special tool. You can see all about that in the Ultimate Predator Proofing video where we were building all of this. But I got some extra stakes and we put them throughout the middle of the run. There are 3 of them. Now this run is not super long. I mean, I'm trying to remember the measurements, maybe 45 feet long. So we have decided for the chicken netting where we're going to be mounting it. The plan is, and I mean, you can staple this stuff. It's basically just, like I said, it's just nylon. So we're going to staple it all along the fence. Then it's going to come up and meet these wooden, they're not exactly dowel rods, but they're not really like a 1x2. I don't know what they are. Just thin pieces of wood. I know you can't really see, but what we decided to do, our strategy is that if we come down here and pretend that this is that wooden rod, we drilled a hole in it and we're gonna thread a zip tie through it so that the zip tie is sitting open like this. We'll put the bird netting on it, and then we'll cinch the zip tie so that it holds and the wind can't blow it away. Now, this nylon netting, one thing that we're kind of interested to see is we know that it's going to have a little bit of give, right? It doesn't have a structure on its own, so it's just gonna go whoop, and it's just gonna droop down to the lowest point for as much slack as there is. So it'll be interesting. And we are not planning on doing the zip ties completely tight. We want it to have a little bit of movement for, you know, if there's strong winds and things like that. And then here on this end, we're going to attach it to, this is just garden wire here. Now eventually, I know it seems kind of silly to do bird netting and then you have this gap. My chickens cannot fly this high off of the ground. Now they could maybe if they were standing on something higher and then hit that little gap perfectly, but we do have extra rabbit wire. It's going to be a pain, but eventually what we'll do is we'll fill in that gap that's only, I mean, it's maybe 14 inches. We'll fill in that gap with rabbit wire. So now what we're going to do is unwrap the nylon netting. Again, it doesn't have any form to it, so we're going to have to be careful. And we're going to start, you've got to measure your zone and make sure you've got plenty of room. And remember, you know, if you're like me, I don't want it just coming straight across the top here at 5 feet, you know, to where I'm like having to hold it up because we're in here a lot. So that's why we made it 8 feet tall here in the middle, and we're going to have like a circus tent style. So make sure that you measure your space. And again, you know, obviously if your chicken run has a ceiling on it, then you don't need to worry about this. But for the safety of your chickens, for the safety of your little chicks, and then for making sure that your chickens stay in, we are finally going to do bird netting. And this is the first time in the 3 houses we've lived at with 3 different chicken coops. This is the first time that we're going to be doing anything overhead. So, all right, so here's our nylon netting. See, it is what it is that my husband brilliantly has braided. So what we're going to do is I'm playing Rapunzel, Rapunzel. And we found the corner of the netting, which he's got. We're going to the corner that's right back there. So we're going to do corner to corner, and we're going to staple. And I have got all of the netting here all the way up on my shoulder and down my back. And it's all braided and organized. And so we're just going to staple as we go and unravel it. And we've got a plan with what happens if we measured wrong and we end up short, and what happens if we end up with a whole bunch of slack. So just make sure you've done your measurements and you've got a plan. And now we're going to go along with our electric staple gun right there. And we're just going to staple the hell out of this and see how we get. All right, so here's the progress so far. So this is what we've learned through trial and error and having to get to redo some stuff. So what we decided is the most important side that cannot be, you know, in case we measured wrong, that can't be short, is this short side of our funny shaped chicken run, because we're going to build this big little open lean-to structure, and of course the chickens will be able to hop on it and hop out. So this has to be correct. So what we decided to do is we found the corner of the netting, and because the netting is a rectangular shape, we said, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach this short side, the priority short side, okay? And then that way, just in case we screwed up and there's not enough length on the other side, then we'll figure something out. But what we're gonna do is we've got that whole thing done, and then we've gone along and done this whole long side, and you can see my Rapunzel braid hanging there. We have a ton of slack on that end, which is not a bad thing. So here are a couple of suggestions. So like I said, do the priority short side first and start in the corner and go do one short end and then go do the other one. The more person or people you can have helping you, the better, because as you can see, this netting, it's just nylon and it's not tangling on itself, thank God, and it hasn't ripped once, even though we've had to use some pliers to take out staples and do some of it again. But especially in our run, which has dead grass and these stupid railroad tie things and all of that stuff, it is catching on everything and it's getting junk stuck in it, like that piece of bark that's right here. So if you can have people helping you and just holding it, you know, open-handed like this and just giving you slack, whoever is stapling, you know, and keeping it off the ground and keeping it from getting tangled. My husband doing that, not technically not a braid, but just that that loop chain for us to just pull the slack. It was great because I could hold basically the whole entire thing and not have a problem. And then what we decided to do, because we share these fences with neighbors, is we decided to staple it on the horizontal beam along the top of the horizontal beam. And that way, if the neighbor wants to replace their fences, you know, hopefully it wouldn't be as big of a deal. So we stapled it about on that short end. Right now, we only did it about once every 1.5 to 2 feet. But here, where it looks like it's solid, it's stapled about once every foot or so. And then we've got the slack over there. What we're gonna do now is, so we have half of it stapled, right? We have this long side. That's the sound of the ladder of inevitability. And then we have the short side done. Now what we're gonna do is use the ladder and we're going to pull it so that it's fairly taut and affix it to our 3 midpoints. There, there, and there. And again, we're using you can see the hole drilled up there on the top. So we're going to, let me zoom back out. So we're going to, if my thumb and finger are the zip tie, we're going to thread it through and leave it open like that. Put the netting in it, make sure it's adjusted so that it's pretty, not super taut, but I mean, not wasting a ton of extra material over here. And then once we've got it where we want it, cinching that zip tie so that it's pretty firm, but not so that it has no give at all. We would rather have the netting slide around a little bit over time than the netting just completely snap, because of course it's only going to be held to that pole just in one little place. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll start on an end and we'll start pulling it across to the side. And of course, you know, bird netting is going to come in a standard rectangular shape, and our run is shaped really weird. So there's a good chance, you know, either that corner over, I guess not that corner. There's a good chance that like maybe the widest part over here by my gate isn't going to be covered or something, but you know, we'll figure that out when we get there. So here we go. All right. So I forgot to show you earlier. I wanted to show you the dowel rods are affixed to the utility poles right there by multiple zip ties. And then now we've got the bird netting up through that point. So it's like bird netting? No bird netting. So now what we're going to do, this is going to be the weird spot again, because this run is such a weird shape. But now we're going to start pulling taut across the other side. And right now, because again, we don't have the rabbit wire all the way up, we're basically going to be affixing it and pulling it with string like spider web style and attaching it to this garden wire. I know it's not ideal, but it's going to be way better than it was. And we're going to see how much material, if any, we have left over here on the ends. But we're hoping, like I said earlier, to at least get that zone over there, because that's where we've got that lean-to that we want to build. And then we will see what this looks like when we're done. Ta-da! So the bird netting is done. And we have some adjustments to make, some minor adjustments, but it ended up working out really well. So just a reminder on some suggestions and the materials you would want and some considerations. The materials we used obviously the nylon bird netting. This here, the green that's going horizontally, is garden wire. And then we have utility posts with wooden dowels. We used zip ties, and then we used a staple gun and pliers if we had to pull any of those staples out. My kids are playing in the sprinkler, so they're learning the sprinkler etiquette, I guess. So our run again is shaped weird, so you can see, I know sometimes it's kind of hard to see, but there's extra netting there that's kind of hanging, and we'll trim that and cut that as necessary. But for most of the spots, except for this brief area right here, for most of the area, the bird netting made it all the way to the top corner, and then we actually have a foot or so hanging down. So it looks like past this point right here, it looks like we have solid material all the way across. I know it's hard for you to see with the trees and everything else, and I'm trying to not step on anything and maim myself. So I know it's we've had to use kind of creative methods to get it attached over here, but it ends up hanging down over there. And so technically they are completely covered except for this teeny tiny area that's here in the middle of your shot where there's just a little bit of a gap. Right, girls? And like I said, you know, we moved in a couple of months ago and I had never done bird netting before. Knock on wood, I have never had a predator attack before. So this was something that I wanted to learn how to do. I wanted to get it done for the girls, but it wasn't the most urgent thing when we got in. Surely not as urgent in my mind as, you know, making sure that your coop is all hardware cloth and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, we started on the ends where we wanted it to be the most secure, which again was that short side, because we're building that lean-to, and then they've got their umbrella there, and we're going to be adding more plants and all that kinds of stuff. And then so we attached short side. We found the corner, we attached the short side, we went and attached the long side, and then we started pulling across to the halfway point here, to the halfway point here, to the halfway point here, and then the rest of the way across. So we have a ton of extra material over on that end. We ended up a little bit short here, but that's not the fault of the concept of bird netting, and it's not the fault of the bird netting itself. It's just, you know, this run is this like goofy little zone here in the back of our yard. So we've got to get the ladder out of there, of course, but then in theory, the only thing that I need to do is keep an eye on it and make sure we don't get anything stuck in it or anything like that. You know, I'll be watching as it goes into autumn also to see, you know, is it going to just have a ton of leaves sitting up on it? Am I going to have to clean it? That's something I didn't think about until today, to be honest. The other thing that I thought was another side benefit of bird knitting really quick is that a lot of wild birds, whether it's doves or finches or sparrows or grackles or whatever, they carry a lot of disease, and a lot of that disease can transfer to your chickens, whether it's poultry lice or respiratory problems and a lot of other stuff like that. It can transfer to your chickens. So doing bird netting is also going to keep all of those other birds out, and theoretically, you know, it'll keep squirrels and other animals out. Now, of course, it's not going to be able to keep out mice, which normally wouldn't crawl over anyway, but it is going to keep out some of the pests who would be, you know, interested in taking chicken food. So because we're new to it, time will tell if, you know, if we pull it a little bit too taut or not taut enough. You know, I may do a follow-up video in a couple of months just to see how it's holding up. You know, if we've had to make any other adjustments. And of course, nothing that we've done is permanent, right? Like, it'll be kind of an inconvenience, right? Like kind of a pain for us to have to go and take out some staples or redo these zip ties because, you know, it's spare no expense, like super modern technology. But in theory, all of the sides that are not the wood fence, so not that side and not that side, but this other half, it all has like slideability and a little bit of movability, even on those three, my little maypole style dowel rods. So we are good to go, and it does give me peace of mind having them, you know, in there. It feels much more secure, and because at the lowest point it's 6 feet tall, I don't ever have to worry about hitting my little head because I'm only 5'2". So if you guys have questions, suggestions, of course, put it down in the comments. We appreciate you guys watching, subscribing if you haven't already. So like I said, in probably the end of the summer, going into the autumn, I'll do a follow-up video just to see how the health and the you know, the quality of the bird netting is holding up. But I mean, there we go, we got it done. So thank you guys so much for all of your help, and we'll be back soon.